Welcome to Positive Recovery MD. If you're listening, chances are you want to create happiness around you and thrive in your life. We're glad you're here and you've come to the right place. This podcast will inspire and motivate you to not merely survive your recovery journey, we'll give you the tools to build or strengthen your foundation to thrive and flourish in your life. Each week, we'll come together as a community to have authentic conversations around addiction, recovery, and what matters. Growth and progress, not perfection. All while developing positive habits for you to utilize in your life. To learn more, please visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to receive the daily positive interventions that we'll review, as well as gain access to exclusive positive recovery content available only to Positive Recovery MD listeners. All right, let's get started.
Welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, to another installment of Positive Recovery MD with your host, Jason Powers. We're joined with co-host Julie DeNofa, and we've got a special guest. Dr. Bob Beare is in long-term recovery and has been a leader in the mental health and addiction field for 20 years. He holds advanced degrees in music, theater, clinical psychology, and organizational psychology. He is a professional actor and singer, founder of the Braveheart Experience, the Deep Waters Intensives. He is the author of The Creative Fire, 10 Weeks to Emotional and Creative Fitness. He is also a licensed counselor supervisor, as we said, CEO of Deepwater Recovery Programs and Network, host of the Recovery Crew podcast, and senior clinical consultant to several treatment centers. Welcome, Bob. How are you?
I'm pretty good so far today, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, maybe we'll add some well-being to your day. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your story? Like, what was it like? What happened? And kind of how did you get into doing the Deepwater and the Creative Fire stuff?
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me. I know what you guys are up to, and or I don't know what you're up to. I think I know what you're up to, and you're saving lives and helping people get their dopamine and serotonin back up and running. So, right? So we can run on our own chemistry rather than adjust it otherwise. My story could probably be titled something like, I have a lot of experience with a lot of different 12-step programs. The good news and the bad news. I've found a lot of ways to medicate my trauma is one of the ways that I would say it. I came from a lot of people say this, open their story with, I'm from a good family, which I am. And good folks who loved me well and had their own stuff, right? Which is, I've found is pretty much true for all of us. I've had to kind of set this I'm from a good family aside in order to say, or in order to look at, there is some stuff that happened early in my life that sent me on a trajectory that created pain for me. And then I started medicating it. So I won't give the whole childhood story, except to say around mid-teens, I found marijuana and I found joking and fooling around. And, that's not all bad when we create these shadows, right, Jason? I mean, the negative stuff that we practiced, there's also a gift in it. I was dancing around trying to make my mom happy because she wasn't that happy with dad. And I became Bobby the Little Actor, right? Actually made a living at it. In Houston for several years. I did 7 shows at Theater Under the Stars, whether you know that or not. Actually made a living at theater. That's unheard of. But it's not all of who I am putting on a show. I'm good at it, but I don't know if you guys know about the Enneagram. Have you stumbled into that much? The Enneagram? Yeah. Julie's nodding her head. So I'm an Enneagram 7, which most people that have found their way to 12-step recovery have a component of that. And most of us are putting on a show to try to divert attention from the pain, the trauma, just to stay in line with the work that you guys do, that we do. I have found that I have to offload some of that trauma in order to find that joy, that they go together. Jung said, Dr. Carl Jung said, we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light. We become enlightened by calling the darkness into consciousness. And he also said that the shadow, those parts of us that we work on in the 4th and 5th step of recovery, that stuff has joy in it. It's just trapped. We have to learn how to, and in those rooms, we learn how to own the whole thing, right? And I didn't find my way to 12-step recovery until there's the emotional pocket right there. 1987, I was married and the marriage was about to explode. And then we got pregnant. She got pregnant. And it was going to be the solution to everything. This little beautiful girl that was on her way. And she was premature and she died in my arms in 1987. It's still here, man. It's like there's lots of different ways to talk about it, but the grief process is 1987. What would she be? 33? Oh my God. And actually the grieving is, I enjoy the grief when it comes up, because grief and joy are on the same river. I don't know if Seligman talked about that, but I do. But it's the same river, man. And the memory of her is a joyful, tearful one for me. I didn't know anything about that. I hadn't run into guys like Jason Powers yet. So I did find some folks that were doing healing work, and finally found my way to 12-step recovery and immersed myself. And that was in John Bradshaw days. And I immersed myself in the Meadows model of recovery. I don't know if listeners know what I mean by that, but that was a really progressive time in the recovery world, the early 90s. So I got a taste of all of that codependency work and the healing of trauma work and the healing from shame. I was sitting in a therapist's office, Dale Christensen. I don't know if you ever stumbled into him, but he's a good old pal who was leaning back in his chair and charging me $125 an hour or something. I said, maybe I can do that. So I was just about to choose a master's program. I was an actor at that time and was going to do a master's program in theater and music. And I suddenly shifted and went to Clear Lake and got a master's in clinical psychology and popped out as a therapist. So been doing that for a lot of years. The Mankind Project that I know, Jason, you know about, that's where I met your pal, George Joseph. And we've been healing men and women together ever since. That's what it's kind of community-based healing versus clinical. And there's some things I could talk about with that. But most of the other things that are going on in my life these days are related to 12-step recovery in some way, that spiritual transformation opportunity that happens in those rooms in combination with deep trauma resolution work. And out of that comes joy for me. I'm in a better place in the last couple of years than I have been ever. I don't know. I keep waiting for some bad shit to happen, but it doesn't seem to. I will say I now have an 18-year-old daughter who is a freshman at UT in the film school. And she just sent me.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, wow.
She just sent me this film clip of this review that they did of that. I forget the name of the movie. The one with the maybe it'll come
about the dude who.
Yeah, about the dude
with that woman.
Right.
Yeah, that one.
The dude and the one with the plot. Yeah.
Oh, wait. I'll talk about the other one.
It was so good, and I'm so proud of her. And the last thing I'll say is 12-step recovery is pretty good for knocking the selfishness out of you and doing the healing work. It'll knock some but parenting, I'll do anything for her. It's like it's taught me how to get out of that self thing. And it's like parenting is a really good transformational opportunity.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, parenting is sort of like an ongoing lesson that we're not the center of the universe. And, there's nothing like a family to expose one's character defects or, overarching shadows or those parts of ourselves that kind of we like to say hidden. And it's possible to be in recovery and not look at yourself constantly,
yeah.
which is both a gift and sort of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Because I can't, we can't just go on autopilot, say, fuck it, I'm not going to worry. Because I think every decision gets us closer to recovery or closer to relapse.
Yeah.
And so with that, I know about the work you do sort of generally. So what type of person would be your ideal client? Or I'm not sure if you do couples work anymore, but kind of like somebody listening who might resonate and you'd benefit from your work.
I just had a board of directors meeting of Deep Water just before this. And one of the members asked me that exact question. I said, humans. And
I think we have some of those listening.
I'm kind of grandiose. And I think this deep healing transfer, I think all the problems in the world are due to unresolved trauma. We get taken off of our track. And then we start using a variety of things to medicate the fact that we're not living our true life. So we have to go back to that trauma and dump it and give it back to the universe or wherever it came from, and then start living the authentic life. So the ideal.
Bob, yeah. Can I just interrupt for a second so that for our listeners, can we just give them kind of a little bit or a quick definition about trauma, right? Because a lot of times people think when people say trauma that has to be some huge like traumatic event. So could you talk a little bit about how you would define that?
Wow, thank you. That is such a great. It's a little. There was a show in the 60s or 70s, and this guy said, "Whatever you do, don't ask him his name." And he said, because he'd go on and on. You can call me Ralph. You can call me Joe. And so whatever you do, don't ask Bob to unpack the idea of trauma, because actually, I'll try to do the short version here, right? And it does actually have a trail all the way back to the Meadows emergence of a definition of what trauma is. We all know, let's start with the leaves of the trauma tree. The leaves of the trauma tree are all the stuff that we're all treating in treatment every day. Codependency, addiction, all that stuff are the leaves. The trunk is shame, because that's the main thing that comes out of trauma. And here's the 5 roots of trauma. Abuse, right? That's the one people most think of when we talk about trauma. And that's sexual, physical, it can be religious, it can be verbal, and it has a particular flavor to it, and that is it's violent in some way. There's a violation of some kind, and it's usually forceful. And usually when people, I would say most people, when they think of trauma, and I've done this with a lot of groups, that's what that a lot of folks think that's all trauma is, right? That's all. If I don't have that, I'm good. And that's why you asked me that, isn't it?
I want our listeners to be able to kind of see that it's not just that there is, like, some people will refer to it as big T, little t, however we want to go about it. But at the same time, also what one person experiences as a traumatic event, another person may not. So it's really hard to kind of look at that. And so I wanted to at least bring that to the forefront.
That's right. And folks that have experienced abuse, physical, sexual, there's only one advantage that they have in the world. And when that stuff happens to you, you want to find some advantage. The only one is you probably know what your work is. You probably have a sense of what a lot of the work that you need to do is. That's the point. Whereas some of the other kinds of trauma are a little more subtle, and therefore we're in more denial of it. And therefore it may be affecting us in ways that are even more intense than some folks that...
right. Like it's easier to pick up on physical or sexual abuse because it's like tangible, right? And there's bruising and there's contact.
Yes.
But like verbal abuse, religious abuse, spiritual abuse could be sort of packaged in the form of like, I want to make you a better person.
Yeah.
I'm here for you.
That's right. But it's not too hard to look at those kind of abuse. If once we get in recovery, right, we can see that the fire and brimstone and you're going to hell and it's abusive. I mean, it's not hard to see. So let me just unpack the other kind of 4 roots of the trauma tree. The next one is critical incidents. We refer to them as critical incidents. And these things, abuse, we usually talk about it in childhood because between years, 0 to 10, we're like a sponge. Everything that happens stays, and then we have to offload it later. Critical incidents can happen anytime in life, and it's usually what the diagnosis of PTSD emerges from, right? Accidents, war, divorce, floods, any kind of natural disaster, shocking stuff, right? So
from a helicopter.
Are you telling your story here, Jason?
Somebody I know.
Oh, okay. Somebody,
a friend of mine.
I knew you were.
But twice.
I knew you were an adventurer. So yeah, that kind of stuff. And here, just as a little aside, I'm not an EMDR facilitator. However, I snagged a good piece of information from those folks. And what happens when we have trauma is that the memory of that trauma is right here in our face, in our head, in our face, right? And even when I drop a pencil, if it's even close to the sound of that car that I was in, it's right there because as our brains are genius. It's trying to protect us from getting hurt again, right? And EMDR does this tricky thing to help it get off the screen a little bit so that we can function. It helps it settle into long-term memory. I know I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but that was an interesting
explanation,
isn't it? Yeah. Yes, and that's why EMDR is extremely effective in helping people to function. However, it's not the end all because you're not really always healing the deep trauma and bringing that story. Right. Yeah. You're getting it off the screen. And a lot of folks still have some trauma resolution to do on those. Okay. So abuse, critical incidents. The other, another one is abandonment, right? And there's a couple of different kinds of abandonment, right? Physical and emotional. And then, when I'm working with groups in treatment centers, they say, all right, how many of you have kids? Raise your hand. All right. How present were you for your kids while you were using and drinking? Not at all. It is a form of abandonment. And anybody that's from an alcoholic family or a dysfunctional family has abandonment issues. Because a kid needs somebody that can be there emotionally. And then, of course, in divorce and many things that it can happen to have physical abandonment. So abandonment is another one. And if that comes up in relationships later, I saw a meme last week that said, if you don't address your abandonment issues, your romantic relationships will. Right. So abandonment, the other one close to that is neglect, right? Food, shelter, all that. A kid can't go out and get a hamburger if he wants. He thinks he's going to die if he's hungry. And it's not on purpose with most families. Like military kids get dragged from house to house. They're like, but it's not like the parents were being abusive to them. It's just the circumstances. It's like that where do I live becomes important for folks that had a disruption in their childhood. Number 5 is the biggest one that we all have, which is enmeshment, right? In families that have any dysfunction of any kind, the mobile, you probably have it at Positive Recovery, the family mobile. We all take on a different role. And we try to compensate. If we have somebody in the family that's using, somebody's going to be the enabler. And in my case, my mom bailed me out of everything. So I never had any consequences. I came into the world thinking, I can do whatever I want here. And that was a wall that I slammed into many times. And a lot of people have parents who maybe are not that functional and they had to grow up too quick to take care of them. So they miss their developmental stages. So there's lots of different kinds of trauma. The punchline of this that I have that kind of goes into Brene Brown's work as well as a lot of other work, which is a kid does not say, my parents need to go get some therapy. I wonder what's wrong with them. No, a kid says, this is my fault because they're the center of the universe. And therefore, out of trauma, they carry shame. And shame is running the show. And we make up messages about ourselves and each other and the world based on that. And that's kind of my premise about why it's so important to get underneath the surface of all this, get down into that pain and cough up the hairballs. That's the way I talk about it. But it has to be done with a lot of support in a good container.
Since you brought up Brene Brown, her work on shame resilience taught me many things. But one of the main things is that it's an ongoing thing because shame is going to enter as long as I have an inner critic. Whenever I think I don't belong, I'm not good enough, it's time to practice those tools of shame resilience. Like my self-worth is not on the table. It's not negotiable. I'm good enough and I belong, whatever it is. Trauma, I find having had significant amount and I believe it has to do with the age at which it happened, that kids internalize, this is me, this is my fault, I must be defective. It's not, there's no end to it. So even though I might go get help for it, and I have, it's something that, thank God I have certain tools for, but sometimes it rears its head. Yeah. And avoiding it is the wrong thing, right? Like you push it down, you avoid it, you don't experience it. Guess what? You don't get to experience joy. Can you kind of tell our listeners about how you give that gift to people to allow them to kind of get through it and have tools and redo it on their own?
You just kind of did, Jason. You just kind of did tell the listeners that's exactly how it works. And it's hydraulics, right? Hydraulics and pneumatics are good things because we're of nature. We are nature. I mean, I'm the earth. You go out 100 miles and look back, everything here is earth. Even humans, even though we think we're better, everything in us works just like nature. So hydraulics, you push something down, there's going to be an explosion of some kind. And that is how trauma works. There's a point in time when there will be an explosion. So I had my explosion in early 90s, the first one. My ex at the time, it's still echoing, Bob, you got to look at your mom can't come into the house. She can't have a key to our house and just come and go. What do you mean? It's just little things like that, but 1,000 of them. Right. And we don't, and you're right, we don't get cured. There is no cure. It's like alcoholism. I don't get cured from this thing. It's a daily reprieve. And it's the same thing. This is the thing I'm kind of chanting these days. The idea, the clinical versus the community-based vision, right? which is I found a way to bring them together with Braveheart at the Last Resort Treatment Center. I don't know if you've heard about that, but it's the guys that go through it come back and are the facilitators of these other guys doing deep water. That's my thing for men and women's deep water's recovery. But Braveheart is kind of the proof of concept that work can happen in a clinical setting. What happens is like your story, what you just said right there about you having some history gives me permission to tell you about my history. And then we can create a circle where maybe you can step to the center of the circle, and we'll use a lot of psychodrama tools as well as bioenergetic tools. The combination of those, about Lowen and bioenergetics? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay. Jason Powers knows. Julie, is there anything?
Yes, they may not. And I had no idea what the NE7 was. So
Enneagram 7. So I'm trying to find little things that Jason doesn't know about just for my own self-esteem. Anyway, the combination of psychodrama, which is J.L. Moreno, and Alexander Lowen's bioenergetics is the gold standard for getting down into the body. Also somatic experiencing, that whole body of work. To get down in there, feel the pain, loosen the soil of the hardened trauma. I think if you can see it if listeners can see it that way, we pack it down so that the soil is hard. We have to get in a circle where we get the grief rolling. Somebody does a little work, and then, okay, maybe I can talk about mine. All right, pick somebody to play dad. J.L. Moreno found in the early part of the 20th century that psychodrama is so powerful, but he didn't know anything that the Greeks didn't know. That's why the Greeks started theater as we know it. Because if you can get a little distance from yourself, you'll immediately, the feelings start rolling. Catharsis begins. Like those of you that have done psychodrama, Gestalt. Yeah. Right. But when you add the bioenergetic body component to it, it becomes deep trauma resolution work. And it takes a pretty strong container. And, you experienced that with the Mankind Project a while back. But bringing that into a clinical setting is a tricky deal, as you can imagine.
No, absolutely. It's got to be a safe environment, you know. It's got to be the right milieu. But do you do work for individuals outside of the last resort?
Yes, I see individuals in my private practice that are ready to do this work. I also have men and women's group and a men's group. It's kind of an outpatient program. Deep Water's recovery. We've taken the face-to-face version off because of COVID.
Right.
But April is the next one of those, and that's going to be for professionals. For anybody it's really hard to describe what it is, but it's an opportunity to do this work. The next one we're going to do is for professionals, so you guys are invited if you want to come. And then the next one after that will be in June. I hope we're back to being able to take folks that are ready to do the work, and there's an aftercare program that's online. For people that come from out of town.
So how can we and listeners get a hold of you?
Deepwatersrecovery.com is the website, and there's lots of opportunity to find out more about my podcast is The Recovery Crew, and that's a fun. I'm going to get you on there. I'm snagging you right now, and both of you, if I can. We have a blog on there, and also there are teaching pieces similar to the little thing I just did with the trauma tree, that people can engage with if they want to, videos. So
I love that metaphor because I'm a big fan of the hero's journey and how when you're called, you cross the threshold, you go for it, and you face challenges that are increasingly more intense, and you have to know who is a friend disguised as an enemy disguised as a friend, and you sort of navigate until the battle, right? And then
that's right.
You see some gold, but that's only a little piece. Like, you have to keep going through this throughout your life in order to fulfill your potential. And that's why
I refer to it as community-based healing versus, and I'm a clinician. I hate to disparage clinical work, but the clinical model is pretty much, here I am with the credentials and the licenses, and I'm here to hold space for you. And now you're fixed, go. No, wait a minute. I know you guys don't operate like that. I know that. But that is what the community-based model is an ongoing thing, just like 12-step recovery. It is a daily reprieve, and we just keep doing the work, and we get a little bit better, and we're never fixed.
And totally, like Julie and I believe so firmly in the community ethos that 50% of positive recovery is the curriculum that we apply to helping people like thrive in recovery, but half is treating our staff well. It's helping, it's meaningful staff development. It's inclusion. So yeah, man, we're on board. So let me roll into the firing of questions. So what is your favorite sound?
Favorite sound is my daughter's laughter.
And what is your least favorite sound? A sound you hate or dislike a lot?
Coughing in the theater.
All right. What's your favorite?
Now.
Jay Lerner said coughing in the theater is actually a criticism. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I went to the symphony once in Philadelphia when I was actually getting my MAP degree, and they sold peanuts. So like a dumbass, I eat the and nothing makes me cough more, I found. So, I mean, I'm trying to stifle it, but it's just this like ridiculous. Yeah. And, you know, all the eyes are on me. It was a great experience. So, okay, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would be your ideal profession?
CIA agent.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
You know, you have to be covert to do that. I
got a criminal. The skill set is the same. A cop, CIA, FBI agent has the same skill set as a criminal.
Okay, you're right. Right. You got that down. What profession would you hate doing?
Bean counting of some kind, over and over and over, running the numbers on something.
So in Greece, ancient Greece, you would not be playing with any abaci.
Probably not.
All right.
But the fact that you can say abaci tells me that you must have a little bit of a bean counter in you. All right. Go ahead.
Well, my dad's accountant. Dude, yes, Julie, looking at spreadsheets makes me want to stick a pencil in my eye.
Oh my God.
I'm not a bean counter.
Me too, but it's got to be done.
Exactly. Okay. What turns you on?
Passionate, vibrant art of any kind.
What turns you off?
Superficiality.
All right. So let's assume there's a God, and when you die, what would you like to hear God say to you?
This is just phase 2. Phase 2 recovery starts now.
Okay. That's great. It's a good answer.
For sure. So as we look at our positive intervention that we do, and at Positive Recovery, we use the Positive Recovery Daily Guide, all of our actions. Bob, did you get a chance to look at day 33?
I did, but I forgot it. I think it has something to do with Spot It, You Got It, though.
Don't worry, I'm going to read it. So for our listeners, we're going to take a look. We're first going to start with the quote by Alfred Adler. It is easier to fight for one's principles than to live up to them. Adler's quote exposes the ease of hypocrisy. How many politicians and other policymakers staunchly and publicly fight against promiscuity, fiscal irresponsibility, homosexuality, drug use, only to become embroiled in the scandals involving those exact things that they've combated. Perhaps self-loathing or insecurity spurs such energetic opposition. Maybe it is just plain old ego-driven hypocrisy. Parents often want their children to do what they say and not what they do. After all, knowing what is right and directing others' behaviors while doing whatever you please takes very little effort. Words come cheap and easy. Actions require much more. So look searchingly at your conduct for certain principles that you espouse in theory, but fall short of in action. Many people have easier times championing causes that live up to them. Living by principles is often easier said than done. So for our positive intervention, we were journaling. We were asking people to write down the 5 principles you value most. These could be virtues such as justice, wisdom, communal creeds, treat others as you wish to be treated, or religious or spiritual beliefs like love thy neighbor. Tonight, reflect on your actions over the past few weeks. Are you living up to your principles, or are you simply fighting for them? Name one thing that you can do tomorrow to live by these principles. So, a lot of, Bob, what you shared, throughout your kind of telling your story and how you're helping people, certainly you definitely have principles in which you subscribe to and that I bet on a daily basis are trying to live up to. What would you identify as being principles that you value most in yourself?
I'll get to that, but I have to respond to the first part of that writing, which is about the way that we rail against people that aren't, and I think it's a great place to find the shadow. Like there's been things happening in the political world, and I point at that. I'm telling you, the things that I'm pointing at with such fervor are such an opportunity for me to grow and look at those parts of me that still I need to work on. All right, I had to say that. I thought that was a great first part of that writing. And to answer your question, I would say authenticity and creativity. be the couple of things that I have developed, and also the things that I really like in other people.
So how do you show up each day with authenticity?
I went to a meeting first thing this morning where everybody was telling the worst shit about themselves. Hey, I've often thought, check this out, Jason. Jason is an innovator. So if you steal this, I want to do 50-50 with you. Okay. I think we could fix the world's problems if we fitted everyone with a hat and a screen up here that showed the worst shit that they ever did in their life. Don't you think that would level everything, and we would all just be humble and kind with each other if we could?
I think people would run away from me as fast as they could.
See, I only come up with shit that people won't buy. So
you're like Steve Martin from The Jerk with those glasses. Right?
Optigrab.
Yeah.
Dr. Powers, were you taking a look at this positive intervention?
Yes. I came up with growth, service, honesty, freedom, humor, and equanimity. I just added 6th one.
Nice.
Tell me about the equanimity piece.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that word. I like saying it. So tell me about how that works.
So yeah, it's totally something that I value, but it's like elusive and out of reach. And like an example is watching my son play basketball yesterday. He's a freshman, but he made the varsity team, which is amazing. And they put him in, and they were playing like the best team in Texas, and he had 3 turnovers. And I went into like full-blown lunatic mode. Like I was walking around the house saying the worst curse words and like couldn't sit still. I went into my younger's room and she's like, what are you doing? Like, I just have to be around other people. I'm too anxious. And like, so no equanimity. And here I am trying to sort of instill that in others. And that was a great, like, whoop, hello, insanity.
Yeah. The emotional intelligence, people call it emotional balance, I guess.
But I was not. I was so batshit.
Yeah. But I don't want to get so balanced that I'm dead either. So, the Jungian guy, I'm not coming up with names very easily. James Hillman said, being out of balance is being alive.
Exactly.
So,
normal is a setting on a washing machine.
Exactly. So thank you. Jason Power was out of control yesterday. Now I feel better about myself.
Okay, good.
And who's to say what's out of control? Because Dr. Powers asked me earlier, like, how in the heck do you watch your son? Because my son is a professional race car driver. And every now and again, I have to watch it on live stream instead of actually being there. And I've already told people that they're going to hear me screaming in California. So why do we have to find balance when we're so into what's going on? I mean, as long as we're not causing harm to other people, why is it not okay to be that way?
I just feel like when you're out of control like that, you're not thinking rationally. I look at some professional coaches, and some are just calm no matter what happens, but others are like sweating and biting the towel. Like I'm that guy, but I look up to the stoic. That's
why?
I don't know. I just feel like they have more peace.
Yeah.
Maybe the other has more passion.
True. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. For me, as far as, kind of looking at this PI, I was really kind of focused on treating everybody with love and really putting myself in the position of making sure time and time again that I just approach everything from that perspective. And when I do, gosh, I'm a whole lot kinder and a whole lot sweeter, which I don't have trouble usually operating in that space, but sometimes it can be challenging. And so if I just start with the love piece, anything that comes out of my mouth next is much softer.
Even if you don't feel like it, huh?
Yep, exactly.
Like making myself say something loving, even when I want to choke somebody. It's like, because here's the deal. The resentment is in me. I'm the one that's getting the poison. It's like, I might as well force some love through me. And then see, sometimes it's harder than other times though, right, Julie?
Sometimes, yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Bob. What a joy you are. And thanks for giving our listeners a pretty good insight on trauma and its effects and, getting through it as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a pleasure to hang out with both of you folks. And I know you're doing great work. Thanks for you. We all could be doing anything, right? We could be making shoes or the 3 of us got a beautiful gift a while ago. And now we're just giving it back and getting some healing for ourselves. And thanks for inviting me here.
Absolutely. I hope we get to hang out with you again sometime.
Yes, very soon. I've got some ideas about that, actually. So let's chat.
All right. Well, listeners, thanks very much for joining us today with Dr. Bob Beare, Jason Powers, and Julie DeNofa. And please listen again. Take care and have a good day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Positive Recovery MD. Don't forget to visit positiverecoverymd.com sign up to get your daily positive intervention sent straight to your inbox. Be sure to subscribe to Positive Recovery MD on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast to receive an automatic download when a new episode drops. And as always, if you or someone you know needs help, visit positiverecovery.com or call 877-4SOBRIETY, which is 877-476-2743. We are here to help.